Ooh, oh, the temptation to fit in. Welcome back, guys. How are you doing? Another video. Today's video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, being a Christian at work and what that has looked like for me. It's been an interesting one because I think definitely initially it felt as 70% of my life is a public declaration of, this guy, if we know one thing about Prince, we know that he's a Christian, and we know that he's a God-fearing man. But when he came to work, it was just almost like just keeping it cool, keeping it chill, keeping it quiet. It's almost like they don't need to know that side of me. And I think a lot of it came from, my interpretation that, look, this is a very secular world that we live in. And especially within the team that I had, a lot of people were young and would openly talk about going out, getting waved, sex, flings, all these kind of things. And it would just be a situation where I'm like, I just can't engage with you guys. And part of my kind of, I guess, concern is, I don't want to be viewed as the guy that makes all the conversation quote unquote weird or awkward by either, immediately deading it or talking about being Christian and everything that I do. And I think I'll make a comparison between myself in my first post. We call it rotations, basically. In the hospital, we go in different wards. So I would say in the first ward, I was a lot more of that, keeping it to myself, keeping it, low key. When someone asked me, yes, I would openly say that I'm Christian and, that I go to church, and I'll talk about hanging around with people in church, but I wouldn't bring it up in general conversation. And even earlier on in that first rotation, what they would do is these socials, it was seen as this team building opportunity where after work once a month they'll go out to like a bar or a pub, go out for drinks and stuff like that. And even leading up to it, I'm just like, oh man, like, yeah, I know it's a pub, so it's not like a club, but I don't really want to, I know I'm not going to be drinking, it's just going to be, it's just going to be weird. But I was like, you know what, what you're going there for is simply just to talk to people. You're not going to be going out there drinking. Bearing in mind, this is the first time I've been in a pub in a while, because a lot of the reasons I used to drink before was simply to go out clubbing. I don't go out clubbing anymore, so I don't drink, so there's no reason for me to be in a pub. Do you know what I mean? So anyways, I got myself a little cider, a little fruit cider, Copperberg. But then what I just found that there's nothing really for me to talk about with my colleagues. Everyone else is just talking about, just general things. And I think that's normal. But that thing where, for example, amongst other believers, I may talk about football. But that happens naturally. And it's a thing of, if we were to talk about faith and God and, aspects of a Christian life, that's also normal and natural. But because in this setting, I already had that understanding that, it's not, we don't have that commonality here. So it almost feels like we're talking about anything else because we have to, not because it's natural. And that's just how I saw it. Because there were instances where they're like, oh, are you Christian? And I'm like, I'm Christian. I've been Christian for a while. So I don't really drink. And then a lot of them will be like, oh yeah, like I don't really drink like that. either. Like, and I feel like I've just grown past it and stuff like that, you know. And I was like, oh, fairs, trying to establish common ground. But then later on, I'd hear them just be talking about like their crazy drunk stories and stuff like that. And I found myself getting caught up in talking about my previous, drunk, what's the word I'm looking for? Stories. That aspect of me that I was just talking about, the life that I lived prior to being Christian, that's not somewhere that I've ever gone back to talk about or laugh about since being a believer. And now that I've done that, I don't really want to do that again because I'm a completely different person. I love the life that I lead now because I love what God has done for me. So from then I was just like, okay, yeah, man, like I have to be a bit tighter. I have to set clearer boundaries in the sense I'm not going to be entertaining these conversations like I did then. I almost felt like, cool, the only way I was connecting with you guys was not to do with me being Christian. It was me talking about when I used to get drunk. Do you know what I mean? So in that first rotation, from then it just kind of was me just keeping it to myself, keeping it, private type thing. So then when I got to my new rotation with a new set of colleagues, again, I was very ready to have that kind of approach. But then simultaneously, obviously we know the importance of not being shy with our faith, and I would often, ask for courage to wear my faith proudly. Because for me, it wasn't even that I was ashamed of being Christian. Oh, heavens no, I am a Christian first and foremost. It was more so of using a workplace setting to facilitate a discussion about faith, to facilitate discussions about how God has changed my life for the better, in order to encourage people to be curious about God. That's the part that I guess I was lacking courage in. But then there was a time in the new rotation where the weather was good, so we went out and sat for lunch, and there was a gentleman there. We both had the similarity of we're both in long-term relationships, and we were just talking about how that has changed us in a sense, with spending a lot of our time now with our partners as opposed to wanting to go out and stuff like that. And I pretty much kind of said to him, hey, like, I hear it, but for me personally, first and foremost, what has been the biggest impact on me changing my life was God and me becoming Christian. And I said to him, yo bro, I used to be quote unquote active. I used to go out drinking a lot. I used to go out and try to talk to as many women as possible, but there was no fulfillment in that. It was only when God came into my life where I found myself having a purpose. I found myself leading a life that I could be proud of because I was doing it to please God type thing. And to be honest, I kind of kept it surface level in the sense of not evangelizing to the degree of talking about scripture and stuff like that, but I definitely felt myself more open and focused on the fact that like, no, I owe this all to God and I'm all the better for it. And I felt a lot more encouraged to do that more because, for one, obviously the conversation was between me and him, but it was in a pub. It was the whole team was there. Do you know what I mean? And I was so glad that I just talked about who I am just freely. And you never know what that might lead to with that gentleman, but I think it was just a part of me doing my part of not shying away from how God has transformed me. Do you know what I mean? Because the key scripture that obviously comes to mind is that Matthew chapter 5 verses 13. Obviously I'm going to read from verses 14 where it says, "You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Now, to me, when I read and I think about myself at work, I think about how I've so often tried to just blend in and not be seen as the spoiled sport or the guy that no one can chat to, because if you talk to him, he's just going to start preaching to you, or just, he doesn't relate to us because we're all about going out and drinking and stuff like that, and he's not. Do you know what I mean? So when I think about that, when it comes to socializing with colleagues, embracing the fact that I am in the world, but I'm not of the world. But it doesn't mean that I can't sit and chat with somebody that's next to me, because a couple of years ago I was that somebody, and I would have probably cringed a little bit when somebody was talking to me about being Christian and stuff like that. But it was that same cringe that brought me to church, that brought me to God. Do you understand? So now I'm a lot more open with, the fact that I do a YouTube channel, talking about my faith and, the realness of God in society and how, God has transformed my life, and I just want to talk about it. And that's always been like an easy avenue because of the social media thing. And then it was to the point where I've sent someone from work a link to my channel, just have a listen. And again, I'm not focused here on whether what I've done has now immediately caused that person to be Christian or not. But I think what my heart is set on is like, God, I want everybody to know. I want everyone to know who you are in my life. But at the same time, I want to be inviting to people. That's been my desire. It's still difficult because of the challenges that I have sometimes in balancing my devotion and also socializing with colleagues. Because obviously there's been periods where, I would want to do Bible study by myself at lunch, or want to spend time just listening to praise and worship at lunch in silence. I may want to, continue my fast. But it's just like, it's a bit awkward now, because I'm just gonna disappear, and then I'm gonna come back and it's gonna seem like this guy's antsy. So there has been periods where I'm like, should I postpone my devotion? Should I do this? Should I not fast today? Should I do it later? Kind of thing. But then I thank God in those moments where the Holy Spirit just like, bro, you're in this world, but you're not of this world. So I stuck to it and I continued my fast. Like, there was a point where we had a buffet at work. Do you know what I mean? We had a buffet at work and I just, kept cool, kept quiet. And again, I'm overthinking it in my head of, if they ask me now, why am I not eating? I don't want to be telling everybody that I'm fasting, because that obviously for me defeats the whole purpose of it, etc., etc. But it just looks awkward and I'm like, what? Like, what's going on? But there was a point where they flat asked me like, are you doing a fast? I was like, yeah, I'm fasting. They were like, oh, cool, fair enough. And then they just kind of talked about fasting being good for health benefits and stuff like that, etc., etc. The point I'm making is it's not going to be perfect, and I am still learning, because I want to use work as an avenue just to have more conversations with people. Tell you the truth, because it seems like when I'm with my colleagues, it's always quick for me to be making jokes and be funny and we get along. So why can't I do that with talking about faith and, just introducing that? But one, we spend such a large amount of our time at work, a large part of our time. So it would be a shame to not use this opportunity, these large hours, to spark up conversations. And that's number one. And number two, God has completely flipped who I am upside down, or right side up, I guess, in this sense. God has completely transformed who I am. And I used to be in the positions of some of my colleagues who are, going out, you come into the social, do you get what I'm saying? And a lot of them can't believe that. They're like, Prince, I can't imagine you ever drinking. I can't imagine you ever being a womanizer. I just want to tell them, like, yo, it ain't me, bro. It's somebody out there. So it's an ongoing thing, definitely. But I will say I'm definitely asking God for that courage, because Jesus stood out like a sore thumb in a crowd. With all his miracles, with all his teachings, and all the ways that he served, he stood out, and people looked at his character. When Jesus sat with sinners and had meals with them, and the Pharisees were questioning, yo, bro, what are you doing? Jesus said, no, these are the most important people that I should be sitting with. Because what he was trying to do is point them to God. So I want to do the same thing. Do you know what I mean? I want to sit comfortably with people, them knowing who I am as a Christian who is proud and strong in my faith, and maybe I could have an impact. There was a time where I invited one of my colleagues to church. I said, yo, bro, if you want to come, pull up. But this is what I mean. I want to be doing that more. I want to be saying, yo, come down. We've got a little event. And I don't want this awkwardness that I have to stop me. If there are any of you out there who've experienced the same thing, maybe you're further along in that journey than I. How did you guys kind of overcome that? What did you do? How did God lead you? Let me know. And yeah, maybe there might be a part 2 where later down the line I do an update on how that's going, because I think many of the challenges include obviously navigating certain topics in like a healthcare setting where I work, because I work in a hospital, right? And how to deal with that, handling difficult questions as a Christian, but also in a professional setting. But yeah, that was the video. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I just wanted to shed light on that. Let's keep going, guys. We're not here to live our lives secluded in isolation. Now that we're saved, yes, I'm gone. You know what I mean? Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, subscribe, share, and peace.